Welcome to the Victoria Rumble Room, a show that, as always, endeavors to try to bring you some of the news and views on things going on in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and the wide world. And, it's always a pleasure for me when I can introduce my co-host with the most, the Croatian sensation, John Gery. John, so nice to have you again next to me or above me or wherever you are on the screen. Where are you on the screen, buddy?
Exactly right. We can never truly reveal to our listener, to our viewers, where we are, Robin, because you never know, because those comments are certainly heating up, but so are the stories. Oh my gosh, off the top. Let's go, Robin. Come on. The U.S. Supreme Court is looking at throwing out Roe versus Wade. The woman's right to an abortion. Boy, does that ever draw a line in the sand for everybody. I stand for the woman's right to choose. I'm 100% pro-choice. I hope the population mobilizes over this issue. I stand for the Prime Minister who supports this position. Canada will not follow the United States down this controversial path as long as I have a breath.
In Canada, every woman has a right to a safe and legal abortion. And this government will never back down on defending and promoting women's rights in Canada and around the world.
So, John, there's no question that there is a big difference between values in Canada and the United States when it comes to things like same-sex marriage, abortion. There is a minority in Canada, a vocal minority, that is more socially conservative. They tend to reside in the Conservative Party, where they're also a minority. And so we do hear from them, but it tends to be a more socially liberal country. And I think in Canada, it's very unlikely that you would see us slip into any kind of equivalency of what's going on in the United States right now. And, I have to say, we've taken lots of shots at Justin Trudeau on this show. There's been things that he does and says that just rub me the wrong way. I don't like all the selfies. I don't like all the wokeism. I don't like all the apologies continuously. But on this issue, I think he is bang on. I do admire him for quietly leading the delegation into the Ukraine. That's another area that I think Trudeau is succeeding. This happened at the same time that Russia's been increasing their pressure. And it's really good to see that Canada is standing resolutely arm in arm with the Ukrainians. And we asked our Royal Roads military expert, Chris Kilford, what he makes of the conflict in the Ukraine at this very moment. We've been putting billions of dollars towards the Ukrainian cause. Canada has stood with NATO and the United States. How does Chris Kilford think it's all going?
There's no replacement for Western-built equipment. It's awfully expensive, but it's very effective. And the Russian equipment I've encountered over the years is poorly manufactured. It looks flimsy, and so I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a tank is a tank, but I have questions about their capabilities and the equipment they have, and there's fighter fleets and so on. And so their fighter jet fleets, all of that, big question marks about them. And, what we have seen of the Russians up until now, they always had the upper hand because they were fighting in Syria against enemies that were not as, or people that were not as, didn't have the sort of weaponry that we have in Ukraine. And we saw them in Libya. But even in Libya, it didn't take long for the opposition forces in Libya who received some equipment from Turkey, for example, to gain the upper hand on the Russians. So, but our thought was that they were actually much better than they are. And I think they, in their senior leadership, the senior leadership in the military knew that they have issues, but what they would portray on television among the politicians and on parades, you have these parade armies that roll through Red Square and all the tanks are painted and it all looks very efficient. But when you then put them into a real situation, you get what you get now. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Man, we're lucky to have Chris Kilford within our regional community, certainly within our digital community. Thank you, Chris. He's held a senior rank in the Canadian Armed Forces and is today the president of the Victoria branch of the Canadian International Council, CIC. what an amazing resource he is for our community. Hey, Robin, we've had a little controversy on the Rumble Room. A few comments, a ton of comments. The issue of anti-vaxxers came up in a big way this week. Big way. Victoria lawyer Umar Sheikh is going to court on behalf of over 200 mostly unionized employees who have lost their jobs because they refused to get vaccinated, Robin. We heard Umar's arguments that this went against the Canadian Charter, and he's taking unions to court, including the big union in BC, the BCGEU.
And you know, John, we have been very clear on our program from the start that we fully favor people getting vaccinated. We believe that it protects you from getting seriously ill. It reduces the percentage of you getting COVID-19. Even now with Omicron more virulent, your chances of getting sick are smaller and your chances of getting seriously ill are much, much smaller. And, you know, people that don't get vaccinated, they are, to me, are a bit of a mystery. You know, some of them, they don't trust the science. Some of them say it's because they don't want government telling them what to do. For some, it's a religious thing. And, you know, we've made our voices very clear on this. And we've also had a lot of viewer mail telling us how other people feel about this issue and about Omar and about our interview. And so let's maybe take a look at that, John.
Robin, collectively across all of our platforms, we've had close to 200 comments all around this issue and around Umar's interviews and his comments. So suffice to say, there's a lot of mail, Robin. Let's read 2 or 3, whatever we end up doing here. For example, Jim writes, 12% efficacy, according to Pfizer's 80,000-page report. Anyone feeling duped yet?
And Art writes about the anti-vaxxers, these people are aliens. They lack empathy, caring, and understanding, and are selfish to the core. Some of John's and Robin's guests are off the wall.
I just love it. You know, you read it again and again and again. You think you're not going to laugh, but anyway, whatever. Thank you, Art. Great comments. At least we try, Robin, you and I, for interesting guests, okay? Which gets us some pretty strong feedback. Hence the title, the Victoria Rumble Room. Mary writes, there is no coronavirus, or the pandemic is false flag bullshit. There is an evil vaccine that will harm you.
And finally, at least for this segment, Bruce writes, what we do know is that unvaccinated continue to demand and demand. And so we always appreciate hearing from our viewers. We like to have a laugh. We're not laughing at our viewers because we do appreciate different points of view. We think it's great that people fully express themselves, and public discussion, at least to my way of thinking, is the key to a democratic society. So let's now move away, though, from the pandemic and move to other health matters. A quick thumbs up to all those people that have been working in downtown agencies over this past pandemic period. It's been so tough down there, helping the homeless, people with mental issues, of course, people that are addicted to opioids. It's terrible. It's an ongoing problem, and lots of dedicated people are spending huge efforts to try to do something about it. And one organization that has been reaching out on this for years has been the Salvation Army, and a man who's worked side by side with the Salvation Army all along for these many years has been Cedric Steele.
You bet. Robin, you and I have known Cedric for decades. Suppose that ages us a little bit. Anyway, he's been a long-time business leader, champion of the Canadian Navy, and dedicated supporter of the Salvation Army. We both know Cedric on a personal basis through our past work with the Chamber of Commerce. I worked with Cedric in my early days, graduating from UVic and as a business person, and he helped develop a network for me. He helped develop relationships for the business, within the business community for me. He's done that for hundreds of people. He was once the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and was later handed the Governor's Lifetime Achievement Award, well earned. The Salvation Army also recognized Cedric last week at a special event at the Officers' Wardroom at CFB Esquimalt.
I have the honor today of offering some thoughts on my very good friend Cedric Steele. I've known Cedric for over 25 years and have seen firsthand the wonderful work he has done in this community and the tireless effort he has invested in making Canadians' lives better.
Cedric, thank you so much and congratulations. We are so honored at Power to Be for what you do for us, but it's more than that. It's what you do for the whole community. You make us all better and you inspire us.
And I was very impressed with what I heard about the Salvation Army. So I was invited by Bob Hauser to join the advisory board, which I was pleased to do. And I spent 16 years on the board.
On behalf of Power to Be, we want to thank you for your incredible support. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, Cedric. We understand next up, he's going to be recognized again by the Chamber and put in the Chamber Business Hall of Fame. It just keeps coming and coming for Cedric Steele, and it's all well-deserved. And now we shift again, John. We're going to talk about the doctors of BC and the doctors' struggle in British Columbia because they are leaving their jobs. They're retiring, they're moving, they're getting away from general practice medicine. It seems like the family doctor is becoming a dying breed. And BC Healthcare Matters is an organization that is rallying a big event on the 19th of May, upcoming here. And it's going to be between 11 and 1. And John, it's a big event, and you're going to be the master of ceremonies.
Oh boy, am I ever. I don't know if they're ever going to invite me again after that event. But certainly I'm very honored and passionate about this issue. I'm very glad to be at that event on the 19th. We hope to get a big turnout, and that turnout, hopefully, and the petition that will be delivered to the legislature, hopefully that'll catch the government's attention. Also looking to push this call to action forward, and I think this is great, is View Royal Councillor Gery Lemon, who introduced a motion that the UBCM declare the BC doctor shortage a state of emergency. Let's zoom Gery in.
Now, joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room for the first time from the beautiful municipality of View Royal is Councillor Gery Lemon. And it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's topical. The thing that you've introduced now is very topical. A resolution on the family physician crisis to your council. It's been now passed by your council to go forward. You want it to go forward to the UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities. And what you're asking them to ask the provincial government to do is sit down with the doctors and try to sort out this doctors crisis. It's a big ask. Do you think this isn't already taking place, this conversation between government and the doctors?
Oh, I've no doubt it is in many ways, and they're having many conversations. What we're asking for here, Robin, is that it be addressed with the same kind of urgency that any state of emergency in the province would be addressed. We need a solution, and piecemeal doesn't seem to be working. With 1 million people in the province, that's 20% of the population, without a doctor to call their own. That's not acceptable. It's not the province we knew. It's not the country we knew. And I think that our healthcare system is emblematic of who we are.
Yeah.
And something's going and gone terribly wrong and needs to be fixed.
Gery, the Ontario election just started, or will be starting.
Yeah.
Recently, a poll was done, a major significant initial poll, asking everyone in Ontario, what is the number one issue? And we think, is it affordability and everything? Yeah. By 3-1, it was healthcare. By 3-1, it was healthcare. So this is a burning issue across Canada. I'm quite certain it is the same it would be the same polling in BC, if not higher.
Yeah.
It's great that you're bringing a resolution like this from a local regional Victoria Council. 1 in 4 people. I mean, those are amazing. You know, if this was a business and someone said 1 in 4 people don't like something, you change right away. I mean,
That's on the South Island. It's 1 in 4 on the South Island, which is right in the middle of View Royal.
You know, you do something about it, right?
Yep.
Oh man, they don't have 1 in 4 don't have a family doctor. Situation is getting worse every day. You and I just chatted. The doctors we have, they're getting older. You know, they're going to be retiring soon. Do you really think, Gery, therefore the UBCM can make a difference? Does civic government, which generally looks after, you know, the roads and the trees and the garbage, do they really have clout in this crisis?
Well, we're where people are. We're there on the street where the people of British Columbia, the people of View Royal, the people of, you know, our towns and region are. And this is what we hear. And I think it's important to every council in BC. So far, it's the voices of 5 in View Royal calling for it. But hopefully it will see the light of day at UBCM, be approved to go into their resolution book and go to convention in September.
It's interesting to me, out of the municipalities, there was 13 municipalities representing the South Island these days. View Royal is one of the smaller ones, and yet very vocal on this issue. I know that you're being proactive, and of course you come from a family tradition of being proactive in View Royal, as your husband, Graham Hill, was the mayor of View Royal for quite some time. Now the current mayor, David Screech, has been very vocal about his unhappiness about closing the walk-in capacity at the local clinic in View Royal. So this is a problem that has been really faced head on in your municipality, and you've been very loud about it in your municipality. Why do you think that is? Why do you think View Royal's really taking a leadership role on this? And would you like the other mayors locally to get more involved?
I hadn't thought about that, but obviously, yes, we want everybody involved. We want this matters, and it matters to everyone. And it's possible somebody else is putting this resolution forward as well. So we may not be the only one, or we may not make the cut because others got in there before us, because it is that important. Here in View Royal, we have a hospital here. And without a medical clinic or a walk-in clinic, people are heading over to the emergency room. So the thing you dread is getting sick, because if you don't have a family doctor and you can't access a walk-in clinic, and Eagle Creek isn't the only one that's closed down, there's been 2 more since it announced. It's untenable. It's too much. It's broken.
Gery, there's going to be a rally at the legislature on Thursday, the 19th. I think that's a great birthday gift for me. My birthday's on the 20th. And so I remember that day. I'll remember that day and I'll be there. BC Healthcare Matters is the engine behind this, along with some very unhappy doctors and members of the wider community. Will you be attending the rally? Do you expect to see other civic leaders also standing in front of the legislature asking that something needs to be urgently done?
I can't speak to the second part of your question, John, but I will be there, sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, I will also be there. I'll make sure I get some nice photographs. And you know what? We're going to prompt through this show that other leaders go there and voice their support for this.
But you would encourage them to go, wouldn't you, Gery? We're giving you that platform to encourage people to attend.
Certainly. Yes, attend.
On an emotional level for yourself, your own family, your friendship network, how important is it that we get more doctors immediately? I mean, you must be talking to people in your community and friends and family all the time about various scenarios where it's becoming a serious problem.
We live in our house with kind of a sense of dread of the day that our current doctor, who is our 3rd in 5 years, retires. And I just learned recently, he said, I've just qualified for my OAS. And I'm like, I didn't want you to be that old. A developer was buying up the homes on our street, and we felt squeezed out, so we sold, but then we had nowhere to go, and there was nothing available in Gery at the time for a long time. So we're feeling a bit panicky, and so we went up island and took a look up there, and then gave our heads a shake and thought, what are we doing? We have a doctor. The whole, apart from deciding whether or not to run for councillor for a second term, having a doctor is a reason to stay here right now. And should we lose our doctor? I don't know what we do. I have, my husband is older. He has a mobility challenge, and I've seen people standing outside the urgent care centers at 6:30 in the morning with their walkers and their wheelchairs, and it's dreadful. I don't want to even entertain that possibility or scenario. Let's fix it.
John, I'm so pleased that you're going to be the master of ceremonies with this important rally. And I encourage everyone to set some time aside, get down to the legislature, support the hard work that's being done to get everybody in BC a family doctor. It's now 1 in 5 in the province that don't have a family doctor. It has to be stopped. And they need to do something quickly. It can't be something, we're going to go study this again for another decade. A lot of us are moving into our 60s and 70s, and we need the help now. So we got to do something about that. But let's shift now. We're going to shift again. It's been a very busy show. And we're going to talk about the Conservative Party of Canada. They're in their throes of their leadership contest. And it's been so tense. Two of the leading candidates, Pierre Poilievre and Jean Gery, were up at a recent event, an all candidates event, and they wouldn't even shake hands. And a lot of barbs are being tossed. The last 2 times that the Conservative Party got together to get themselves a new leader, they chose a conciliator, somebody who was friendly and trying to bring everybody together. And this time around, it seems that the tone is getting a lot tougher. Mr. Poilievre, in particular, is bringing lots of fire to his rhetoric, and he aims some of that at Jean Gery. Let's take a look.
As we all know, public opinion on the trucker convoy is sharply divided. The Trudeau government and the mainstream media have gone to great lengths to vilify the truckers. And back in February, you said that you were, quote, proud of them.
That's right.
Has your opinion on the trucker convoy changed since? And is your support of the truckers a liability moving forward?
No and no. My position has not changed. I said at the very outset before they even arrived that I simultaneously stood with the law-abiding and peaceful truckers who are fighting for their livelihoods and liberties while condemning any individual who breaks the law, blocks critical infrastructure, or behaves badly. That is the position I took then. It's the position I take now. Now, Mr. Gery learned about the trucker convoy on CBC, like other liberals, and he misrepresented them. Now, he believes that I should be censored. He believes I should be canceled from this leadership race and disqualified, in his words, because I don't share his liberal viewpoint. That is the kind of cancel culture and censorship you would expect from Justin Trudeau, but instead we're getting it from this liberal on this stage.
Robin, it appears that Poilievre is the candidate to beat. With Gery, Leslyn Lewis, and Patrick Brown looking for an opening, some kind of way to make a difference. Here to talk about that Conservative race and some of the bigger issues on the Conservative agenda is lawyer and former candidate David Busch. Let's zoom him in.
And now joining us for the first time in the Victoria Rumble Room is David Busch, who is going to talk to us about the Conservative leadership race. And David, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Well, we have various candidates we can talk about in this contest, but let's start with something that they all agree on. All the candidates are saying they want to see an end to the COVID mandates and vaccine passports. And obviously they must feel this really appeals to the base of the party. So saying that, how do you think most Conservatives feel the pandemic has been handled over the last 2 years?
Well, I think it's not just the Conservative base, but Canada as a whole has recognized we've been behind the ball all the way through and falling behind and not keeping up with the science, not keeping up with the evidence, and even not keeping up with the WHO. Trudeau has been about 6 months behind right from the start. And that hasn't changed. Even when the WHO is turning around saying, no, we should be reducing and lockdowns aren't good, Trudeau's trying to increase them. The simple fact is, if you're going to follow the evidence, let's follow the evidence, because that's the best way of doing it. And it's not a matter of turning around and running off of fear, which is, I think, what Trudeau's been doing.
It's interesting to hear that, because, in British Columbia, at least, over 90% of people have been or double vaccinated at least. And a lot of people, over 50%, are triple vaccinated. I haven't seen a lot of widespread resistance to wearing masks. I know that people are tired of it all. And I think most Canadians are tired of it. And that's, I guess, what the Tories are trying to tap into.
Well, it's not a matter of what, you're tired or you're not. It's about doing what's going to keep people safe. And we don't want to see a bunch of restrictions that serve no purpose beyond giving somebody a sense of basically that proverbial fig leaf to hide behind. We want to make sure the rules and the regulations that are brought in to keep people safe are actually going to be effective, rather than just cause people an inconvenience and give them a false sense of security.
Okay, David, great to see you here in the Victoria Rumble Room. I'm quite sure we're going to see a few more times as this Conservative race unfolds over the coming year. I completely and absolutely disagree with your opinion on the mandates. I think that we as Canadians, I think that we've followed these mandates on time as best we could.
Do we want to talk about the election going forward? Do we don't want to talk about COVID? Because as I'm a biochemist, I'm a registered nurse, and I'm happy to talk about where our government failed on this, because this is one of the things I know very, very well. And he's been 6 months behind the evidence right from the get-go, and he's still 6 months behind, unfortunately.
Okay, well, this is great. We're rumbling on here, but let me shift gears here. Okay, let me shift gears, David. And I'm gonna phrase this question by where I stand on it, and then what I think has happened, and that being the carbon tax. Okay, now the carbon tax, I really support the carbon tax as a policy piece. I support the carbon tax if the money goes directly to climate change initiatives, if it starts to solve these huge, obvious issues around climate change. Okay, so that's where I stand. I don't think, it feels like not a penny of that carbon tax has gone towards climate change mitigation. So where do you stand on the carbon tax? On both, if it even works, and what do we do about climate change if we're going to scrap it?
Okay. Right off the top, let's start with where we agree. I support in lowering emissions, both for climate change and also for public health. This goes back to being a nurse and a biochemist and being really interested in people's healthcare. You can drop the emissions down, you get less asthma, less bronchitis, less heart attacks, less stroke. It's good for everybody. I want to see, again, policies that work. BC's have a carbon tax now, we're going on 15, 17 years? Our emissions keep going up. Now, you can argue, they might have gone up more without it. Perhaps, perhaps not. When it was first brought in, it was supposed to be revenue neutral. I could grudgingly get behind that. But now it's just going into general revenue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not lowering emissions. It is making us less competitive for our goods worldwide. It is making life more expensive for Canadians. And it's not even lowering the emissions. Mm-hmm. So what do we got? We've got another tax that's just making things more expensive.
If it were
I think we can agree we need to get something that's going to work and not just make life more expensive.
I'm sort of supporting your position a little bit, David, and I'm also, I think, feeling that we've reached a nosebleed level in terms of what we're paying at the pumps. And I think people are very unhappy about that. And if a party comes forward and says it's time to give some tax relief on that, and if that happens to be the carbon tax for the short term, I think a lot of Canadians probably would listen. But I want to ask about the race and the front runners. And it seems to me at this point, there really are just two front runners, one who's sort of the leader at this point, and that's Pierre Poilievre, and the only person that they talk about that they say could challenge, although it doesn't seem like he is at this point, is former cabinet minister and former Quebec Premier Jean Charest. So, I mean, what is it going to take for Poilievre to get to the finish line? He seems to be getting massive crowds at his rallies. Is that an indication he has it in the bag?
Well, I think it certainly shows that a lot of people are interested in coming out to see him. He's certainly winning the social media presence, but I think you're also ignoring both Leslie Lewis and Patrick Brown. I think those two also need to have their names up there. People tend to forget very quickly, or if they even were aware of it. Leslie Lewis, in the last leadership, she came in the one round, she had more votes, but it translated into fewer points. So she ultimately wound up getting bumped off. So I wouldn't completely disregard her. And Patrick Brown, you think he's out, and somehow he always manages to keep coming back. And this guy also very much knows how to sell memberships. So I really wouldn't discount them either. And because at the end of the day, it is a ranked ballot, combined with what I'm going to call a proportional representation system, or I guess an electoral college system might be more appropriate for how it's decided, with each riding being worth 100 points. They need to make sure they got support across the country. And okay, great, you might have a riding with 3,000 conservatives voting. At the end of the day, that's worth the same as a riding in some very remote community where there might only be 20 conservatives voting. Mm-hmm. They all account for the same. So just because you can pull out a massive crowd in Edmonton or Toronto or here in Vancouver, out here in BC as well, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have enough support way up in Northern Ontario or rural Quebec or out in the Maritimes, or there's points to be grabbed up in Nunavut as well.
Doesn't hurt to have big crowds, though. Think of Trudeau mania back in the 70s. I mean, it makes a difference if there's a buzz about a candidate.
Oh, absolutely, because it tends to show momentum. At the end of the day, the biggest question that people have to think is who is going to be the best chance of forming the next federal government?
And we'll check in again with David Busch a little later in this leadership process to see how things are going and perhaps see how things are stacking up with the next big election, the big federal election, whenever that is. And it probably isn't for a couple of years because the NDP and the Conservatives have made a deal where as long as the NDP gets some of its legislation on the table, it will not challenge any of the budgets from the Liberals in the House of Commons. So it makes things pretty secure for Justin Trudeau, at least for now. And that's about it for the show, John. We're at the end of the program. Perhaps again, before we say goodbye, you could remind people how they can follow the show, support the show, like the show, as we really appreciate that.
Boy, do we ever. And somebody must be listening because man, oh man, are we getting a ton of comments. And that is so fun for everyone to be able to express their opinion as you and I do. And where do we do that? Facebook site. As you can now see, those addresses are being listed above, around, and in between, behind. Facebook site, a Twitter site, and a YouTube site. Please join the YouTube site. That is where all of our interviews are posted. We've also began a place in which you can contribute yourself. All of the kinds of events or notices or opinions that you'd like to share on a Facebook Victoria Rumble Room News and Views site. And of course, we have an Instagram page and a crazy TikTok page. If you want to go nuts, having fun reading hundreds of comments, please think about joining that one as well. And that, Robin, is the end of the show for this week. I'll tell you something though, because, and really I'm very excited about this event on the 19th. Our next show will be speaking to Dr. Jennifer Lush. She's one of the key speakers at this rally on the 19th. But for now, Robin, I remain your humble Croatian sensation and illustrious mayor of North Tulip Avenue, Johnny Jurisic.
And John, it's just an honor to share the stage with you. Anyway, I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.